Did you learn something from these learning sessions? I certainly did. Thank you so much to our community of Power BI women for sharing their knowledge. Advocates and allies can be instrumental towards achieving gender parity in technology. Let's listen to our allies share how they support women in tech.
Next, we'll hear from Johnathan Lightfoot, a United States Navy veteran, president of Symbiont Inc., an information technology firm, and an author of 3 books on Microsoft technologies. In this session, he will share ways men can support women in tech every day.
Thank you, Deborah, for introducing me. As Deborah said, my name is Johnathan Lightfoot, and my session for the Power BI Women's Summit is how men can be allies to women in IT. I have to say that I'm very excited to give this presentation because this is tips and tricks and techniques, if you will, that I've used in my career here in IT. One of my favorite quotes is by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it reads, "Women's rights are an essential part of the overall human rights agenda. Trained on equal dignity and ability to live in freedom, all people should enjoy." This is a saying that I heard years ago, and when I thought about it, it was actually presented to me by my sister. She was studying women's studies in college, and she came across this quote and shared it with me, and we talked about it. And one thing that I've learned in IT and in my career is that women's rights are not just about women's rights. It's about the rights of humans overall. If we can't treat each other with dignity and equity, then how on earth is this world going to go any further? And that's been a guide stone, if you will, in my entire career. And I hope this session, I'll be able to share, like I said, my tips, tricks, and techniques that I've used to make sure that I'm an ally and that I'm advocating and working to help women in the workplace, especially in IT. So for a quick introduction, as Deborah said, my name is Johnathan Lightfoot. I've spent over 30 years in IT. I know on the site it says 20 because I'm trying not to feel too old, if you will. But I started my IT career professionally in the United States Navy, and I've spent the last 20 or so years working in corporate and government environments. I'm also the author of Microsoft SharePoint Plain and Simple series of books, which later on in the presentation, I will go over some things I did when I was writing those books to make sure that I was promoting women in the IT space, especially around the Microsoft platform. I'm currently running my family's 36-year-old IT contracting company called Symbiont. It's been a great pleasure after working for many years in other organizations. It's great to come home, if you will, and take on the reins, if you will, for my father, who took over for my grandfather. So let's just jump right into it. You know, my first tip that I would give to men watching this presentation, or that you might want to talk to your male colleagues and coworkers, is understanding of privilege. And I came across a little definition around privilege that really resonated with me, and that was privilege is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group and not others. This resonates with me because in my time in IT and in the workplace, there have been times where I've been in a room and there's been no women. And we're talking about promotions, or we're talking about, you know, who's going to be on a project or is going to lead a project. And it's always was around, you know, men referring other men. And I tend to be the one that speaks up and says, you know, what about Mary Jo? What about Elizabeth? What about these other candidates who are not male? And sometimes I do get some people look at me funny or things like that. But again, because I'm in the room, because I'm able to have a say in processes and assignments and what have you, it's vitally important that I make sure that I'm advocating for women in my workplace as well. So my biggest tip on that one is men, we're in the rooms and the discussions, and we need to speak up. We need to make sure that we're not just talking about other men, and making sure that we are being fair and equitable in bringing women into the conversation as well, and making sure that they get opportunities that are not sometimes formally advertised. My second tip, gender inequality has more than one face. Sexism is often intersectional and requires different levels of awareness and action to effectively address it. A little later on, I'm going to talk about another tip. But, when we think about gender inequality, some people try to think about the big ones, right? Pay, promotion, advancement, hiring even. But we also have to realize that there are other slights that are happening in the workplace as well. And another tip, I'll go more into detail on that. But we also have to realize that we have to be cognizant and aware of our environment. As I talk to other male colleagues, I'll say, it's not good enough just to float through. And if it doesn't affect you, to think, oh, well, it must be fine. No, it's really getting in, working with your colleagues, especially your women coworkers and colleagues, and understanding where their biases are being used against them, and also where they're not given the opportunities or maybe even not even recognized at all. But again, you have to always keep in mind that this is a bigger problem than just the big three, as I call them, of pay, hiring, and advancement. During my time in IT in corporate, I have had the pleasure of influencing my organization's hiring, compensation, and promotion processes. In my current role, running my family's company, I have a really direct role in that. And whenever we are talking about, hiring or paying someone or promoting anyone, I tend to say, let's bring everybody into the bucket. And if we're going to take anyone out, there must be a really good reason of why we're taking that person out or why we're not considering that person for that role, be it a male or female. But also I look at women specifically because I do know in IT, I realize that there is a discrepancy, if you will, or inequality that happens in these different areas and all. So one thing that I live by is I don't just raise the awareness, but I also actively advocate for women to be hired, paid, and promoted equally. And that does mean sometimes in my career, I've had to say, you know what? That promotion isn't meant for me. It's meant for this other person. And be very happy to do that. And I can also say in my career that I've had many women, colleagues of mine, who've stepped back for me and said, hey, Johnathan, you need to take this on, or you should be the one getting that. And again, raising that awareness is not enough. We have to also make sure we're advocating and pushing to ensure that we're helping our women colleagues out and making sure they're getting their just desserts, as it were. Tip number 4, fair workplace policies is a must. It's not a matter of just saying, that's a policy that's only for women, or that's a policy or procedure that's going to just affect a certain group. We have to make sure that when we are looking at our policies and even procedures, that we're making sure that we are looking at things like, is the compensation fair and equitable? Flexible hour policies, it used to upset me whenever I remembered people would say, hey, so-and-so is taking maternity leave, and they would look down on that. Because the way I looked at that was, well, wait a second, there is also something called paternity leave. So men should be taking that as well. And also if somebody needs flexible hours because they have to, either drop off a child or take care of a sick one, or leave early because they're doing those activities, that's a policy that's in place. It should not be looked down upon because somebody uses it. And notice I didn't say take advantage of it. I said use it. It is a policy that's there. The company has said that it needs to be there. So therefore, hey, what's wrong with it? Also, working from home, with this post-COVID world, working from home is the daily norm now for most of us and all. However, sometimes that we've learned, and actually it's not even sometimes anymore, we've learned a lot of positions who we thought were meant to be in person. You had to be in the office. We found out that's not so true. And it's interesting that people for years before COVID were even advocating and saying that. However, it was always looked down upon. Also, back to maternity and paternity leave, organizations, we need to make sure that we're making sure that they're generous, that we're not rushing people or making them feel bad because, when they have either a newborn or they've adopted a child, that they're taking that time to make that connection and that bond that's needed. And one thing that a suggestion I always say is, what's wrong with on-site childcare? If you think about it, I have a daughter and I'm responsible for taking care of her just like my ex-wife is. So therefore, some days I might need to take the child to childcare, and it should always be on my ex to be the one doing that. And we all need to, make sure that any workplace policies or procedures or standards that we're putting in place, making sure that they are fair and equitable, while at the same time making sure that they're human. Right now, a big thing is about work-life balance. So are the workplace policies work-life balance related? And also, are we making sure that we are paying attention to the dynamics of families? For men, take paternal leave. I have to tell you, in today's world, a couple days ago, I was very happy when I saw that the Department of Transportation Secretary had taken parental leave because he and his spouse had decided they were going to adopt a child. And he did not have any regrets or any ill feeling about doing that. And I said, that's awesome that he did that. Why? Because it lessens the stigma. In the past, it was always maternity leave. That's colleague. She's going to be out for 6 weeks or 12 weeks for maternity leave. How are we going to, let's work around this. And, it was always a stigma, and it was always around just women taking it. Well, we have parental leave as well. And paternal leave. So we should take that and get that bond and everything. Parental leave is not just a women's issue. It is a shared issue. I know that when my daughter was born and when I was married, there was no way on earth that my ex was going to be the one taking care of the child all by herself. And I had to be the one who went to work and lived my life while she was trying to struggle to figure out, how she's going to get to work on time, or how is she going to finagle to get herself away from work to pick them up from childcare. We shared that responsibility. And I had no qualms going to my manager at the time and saying, hey, I got to leave at 3:30 because I have to pick up my child who's an hour away, and I'm not going to pay an extra $100 every 15 minutes because the child is late. And I didn't get any pushback for that. So I think in my own little way at that organization, especially, I took away that stigma and made it so that it wasn't just a woman's issue, it was all of our issues. Mentor and sponsor. There's a big thing we hear about mentoring, right? And a mentor offers advice and consulting. And that is great. That is also always great, especially for people who are looking to either enter a career or they want to level up their career. Mentoring is awesome to give them great advice and consult with them. But another big thing and this goes back to tip number 1, being in the rooms. But another big thing is sponsoring. And a sponsor is the one who's going to be advocating and pushing for people. It's great to mentor and to give advice and to help people. But a lot of women, they need somebody who's going to be in that back room, who's going to be in that boardroom, who's going to be in that meeting and talking and pushing and advocating for them to get that role, to get that position, to get that opportunity. And we shouldn't just be sitting back and just saying, oh, let's look at other men and for this role or this position or whatever it may be. Also, make sure that you offer to mentor or sponsor someone, especially people in the workplace. Some people don't want that. You are not here to push your will on them. Women are quite capable of being successful in the workplace on their own, and they sometimes may not need your assistance. And it's fine to ask, hey, would you mind if I sponsored you for this opportunity, or if I put your name in the hat for this? Don't just do it because you think, well, I'm helping. Maybe you're not. And once you speak with that person, then they're able to tell you if that is something that they want somebody to sponsor or to push for them. Tip number 7, be mindful of harassment. It's not good enough to avoid obvious harassments like sexual innuendo, sexist jokes, or commenting on a woman's appearance. Harassment takes on many different forms that are what I call very subtle, where as a man, we probably don't even realize it. But, think about the issue of maybe someone who was denied a promotion or denied an opportunity time and time again. And there's really no solid reason given to them as to why that happened and all. So it's good to talk to your colleagues to figure out, what's going on. How are they feeling about that? And also, if you notice something, to ask them, this is something that occurred that kind of bothers me. Am I taking this a bit too far or anything like that? You also have to have the courage to highlight and report this harassment as well. If I go back to the example of the female colleague who was denied a promotion or an opportunity, and this may have been the 5th or 6th time that they were, and you look back at it and you're like, there's really no reason that person should have been denied. maybe I need to go report this, talk to a manager, talk to a director, talk to an executive, talk to HR, and say, I think there's something going on here. It doesn't directly affect me, but it's kind of disturbing. And for me as a Black male, it's really disturbing for me when I see that, because I'm like, well, gee, if they're doing that to this person, then what are they going to do to me? Or what have they done to me? So it's careful. We have to be very careful that we're always being mindful of harassment, and we're looking for those answers. And sometimes you have to be the one to raise the alarm. Tip number 8, give women credit. Men, we need to stop mansplaining or heap-eating. Women that I've worked with, I've been very fortunate to have, they can speak on their own. They have great ideas on their own. They can write on their own. They don't need us to come in and explain something because they just said something or what have you. They're quite doing it for themselves. It is okay to amplify, but make sure that we're giving the woman credit for who came up with the idea. So often I've seen in meetings where a woman will bring up a topic or bring up an idea or suggestion, and then the men just jump on it. And the next thing you know, you leave the meeting and thinking, did Steve come up with that idea? And somebody ends up saying, well, no, Amy mentioned something about it, right? But then later on, what happens? Steve gets the project, he gets the awards and accolades, and meanwhile, Amy sits in the corner. No, we don't need to do that. We need to stop doing that. It is fine to repeat the key points, but you always want to make sure you're keeping the woman, the person who brought that idea to light, keeping them in the focus. Instead of trying to explain it, if you need additional information, maybe ask questions, but you don't need to repeat it and try to take ownership of it, even subconsciously. Tip number 9, my favorite one, shut up. Men, we got to just be quiet. For one, it is rude and disrespectful. When you're in a meeting or when you're working with a woman and she has an idea or she has a train of thought, let them finish. We do that for men. I've never, ever seen a man cut off another man in a meeting, but I've seen it happen so many times with women. And unfortunately, I'm the bad guy when it comes to this, because I'll be the one to speak up and say, you know what, Tom, I think Beth was saying that. Beth, do you have something to say? Let them finish their thought. Let them have that circle, if you will, because they have a thought too, and they give to the workplace just like other men do. Also, I understand that sometimes, there might be a meeting going on or a collaborative session happening, and you get excited. And I tell you, hold back your excitement. Let the women finish. Answer any follow-on questions before we open our mouths. Let them get their thought out. It's their idea, not ours. And finally, tip number 10, speak up. We have to notice that all forms of injustice that women are exposed to. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your family members, even women. They will tell you stories sometimes that may just shock you, things that you may not even have considered or even thought of and all. But because we are not listening to women and we're not paying attention, we allow a lot of these injustices to continue on and even get bigger and bigger, if you will. We should also take action to hold the perpetrator accountable. It's not good just to say, oh, Tom didn't mean anything by that. No, they meant something. It came out of their mouth. So therefore, we need to hold them accountable for it. Maybe it might be reporting it. Maybe it might be ostracizing them from your group. Maybe that's not the person I want to hang out with, because if you're doing that to women, I don't want you in my presence at all. Also, support the victim. So often in the workplace, especially in IT, we try to keep the waters calm, if you will, right? We try to make it so that we don't want too much drama or too much excitement. But look, if a woman comes to you or expresses something that happens, don't just blow her off. Listen to what she has to say and see what can be done to assist them if they want the assistance. But make sure that you're not just blowing off the complaints that you hear. Listen to them, and if needed, take action. And also, finally, use your privilege to say and do something. I can't tell you how many times that I've been able to use my different positions in organizations to be able to want to push that stone a little further along the path, if you will. Remember what I said the very first slide. We have a certain privilege in certain offices at this point in the game. Hopefully that privilege will go away as time goes on. But while we have it, We need to use it to advocate and assist and support our female colleagues. So that's my talk today. Again, my name is Johnathan Lightfoot. I believe that allyship of women in the workplace, especially in IT, is vitally important. I have been privileged over my career in IT and the Navy to work with some wonderful women, well, not just some, a lot of them, some of which I think are even other speakers on here. And I've been amazed by the resilience, the encouragement, the knowledge, and also just the can-do-itness of it all. And if we can get to a better place where we are speaking up for women and making sure that we're using our privilege to help them in the workplace, then we're going to have a great workplace in the future.
Thank you for sharing your story of how you've supported women in tech and ways other men can do the same, Johnathan.